Welcome to Public Comment. I'm John Dunbar, former mayor of Yountville.
And I'm Alfredo Pedroza, vintner.
And I'm Joe Nordlinger, CEO of Napa Firewise.
Thanks for joining us as we talk about politics, people, wildfire protection, and whatever else is on our mind.
And what it might cost you.
It's true.
Prior to 2017, nobody was thinking in any massive scale about pre-fire.
You could take care of your land and then your neighbor doesn't take care of it, and now you're at higher risk.
There's a lot of issues going on, and we're asking the public to pay more for this.
Joe, thank you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to having a conversation. And we've talked before about not only Napa Firewise, but just wildfire protection and mitigation in Napa County in general.
Yeah.
But I know that there's an initiative that's being presented that we really wanted to drill down on with you and learn more about and share some thoughts that we might have or that people have shared with us and just talk a little bit more in depth about that.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
And before we get into all of those details, tell us a little bit about your background and what's brought you to this place at this time.
Yeah, certainly. So my background is not in fire. I'm not an ologist or a forester. I'm a private sector guy who had the good fortune of starting and then building and growing what wound up being one of the largest technology and life sciences consulting companies in North America. So I wound up buying a large piece of property in Napa after in 2014, and suddenly this whole issue of wildfire became very apparent to me because the Rag Canyon fire happened on the other side of the valley, and my 28 acres of hillside forest, which seemed really amazing, suddenly seemed a little more ominous and threatening. And so I got involved with this whole wildfire space, went through the academy, became a volunteer firefighter, got involved with one of the fire safe councils, and then eventually took on the role of being a part of the leadership team at Napa Firewise. But my background is private sector, building services firms, thinking about things from the standpoint of who's your customer and how do you scale a business.
And since you've been with Napa Firewise, there's been even additional growth with the fire safe councils throughout the county. And so tell us maybe a little bit about how that all works, and then introduce the whole concept that you have with this wildfire and open space initiative about trying to find additional and kind of sustainable funding for both open space and fire protection.
Certainly. Well, back to your earlier question. So Napa, when I got involved with Napa Firewise, it was 2017. The Nuns Atlas, Tubbs fires had just happened. And at that time, Napa Firewise was a pretty small organization, all volunteer board, had a budget of $100,000 a year. And it was focused on starting fire safe councils. And there were 6 fire safe councils, I think, at the time. Some of them were pretty shaky. And so I got involved at that point and worked with a number of other people to really turn Napa Firewise into a larger shared services, kind of core services platform that now has plans for, I think, 30 fire safe councils. I believe we have 24 that are established. Many of those have a Firewise designation, which helps with insurance. And we've been working arm in arm with the county and Napa County Fire, CAL FIRE, a lot of our agency partners here in the county, the Land Trust, RCD, and others, to really drive what I call comprehensive wildfire resilience. Wildfire is one of these perils that's very unique. Yeah. You're only as safe as what your neighbor does. Fire doesn't care about whether you're rich or poor, whether you lean left or right. It just burns based on weather, topography, and fuel. And so it is a peril that really pulls people together across lots of different sort of demographics and ideologies. And this is sort of one of the driving factors of the effort that we've undertaken with the Land Trust to develop durable funding. I mean, wildfire preparedness and pre-fire mitigation is very expensive. It requires a lot of ongoing work and maintenance. To do this work requires sustained and durable funding to be able to look out and make plans long term. It's very, very hard to execute any kind of integrated strategy if you don't know 1 year from the next if you'll get a contract or get a grant. And so have for some time, as you both know, because we were involved with Measure L, been thinking about a way to get a durable, consistent, and predictable funding source. And when we started looking at doing that in last year, looking at doing it for 26, we knew that the Land Trust similarly was interested in finding consistent funding for the open space district, which has long been a goal. They've taken 2 stabs at initiatives. And it just became apparent that there was so much synergy around these issues of watershed resilience, protected land resilience, wildfire resilience, forest health. And much of the work that we do is not dissimilar from the work that they do in stewarding their lands, and that the open space districts and the land trust want to do more of on their lands. And so it just became obvious.
So before we get into the details of the ballot initiative and the 19 pages of the ballot initiative, the funding sources, I think, are hard for the average person to understand.
Yeah.
Napa County has a budget. Frankly, in my opinion, it's a smaller percentage of the overall budget than it should be, because there's been talk about wildfire protection and mitigation being a priority, but not so sure we're seeing it in the budget yet. That's a different conversation potentially. But the relationship that Firewise has with the county and its current funding, as well as the impacts of, like you alluded to, grant funding, which can be very competitive, but also inconsistent in its availability. But also what happened when we all thought the federal government was, through their BRIC grants, going to provide millions of dollars, and you already had the 10-year plan ready to go with not only new projects, but maintaining existing projects. And then that money got clawed back.
Yeah.
And so those things, I think, are some of the motivations for you to now be looking for this, even though the reliable funding source was really something you needed anyway.
I think that's true. And we leave no stone unturned. We know where the money is and we chase it. And we have, pursued and helped the county to pursue different kinds of FEMA grants. We pursue grants every single year. We know what all the cycles are, and we are indefatigable. I mean, we are relentless. We have a philosophy at Napa Firewise that we pursue. We're 100% successful in our grant writing eventually. We just chase. If we don't get it, we repackage. But the reality is, as somebody who does a lot of deep thinking about this grant writing and has been a part of writing a lot of these grants, on the federal side, that money is less than not predictable. It is just, you cannot count on it. Yeah. The county secured a $37 million BRIC grant, and it was clawed back. That whole program was disassembled. So there's very little hope. When we went back to try to reapply for those funds to help the county to reapply, the number of participants chasing that money increased like 500% or something for a bucket of money that was, a quarter the size.
I think going back to, everything turned in 2017, right? People's mentality, people's commitment to fire prevention, right? Because it was always, you react to an incident, right? And I do think, not that you were attacking the county, John, but I want to be clear. The county
is encouraging
the county did contribute a few millions of dollars to this initiative.
Well, yeah, and I can add on to that. I think that it's important to understand that prior to 2017, nobody was thinking in any massive scale about pre-fire. Why would they?
Nor was it in the contract.
It wasn't in the contract. And so really all of the money was focused on suppression and operations. Made perfect sense. And I think it's important for the community, for the residents of Napa, to understand that all of these pre-fire costs, they really are new costs.
Correct.
Unanticipated in any previous budgets and any previous notions about how tax money was spent. I'm not going to claim to understand how all the county's budget machinations work. The county has provided us, with funds since 2020. After our community wildfire protection plan was established, then they did step up. We came up with a 5-year plan, and we went and raised about half the money. The county provided about half the money. But they've always told us that this money is not money that's sort of...
It was one-time money.
It was one time. And they've told us, they've been very clear that it's going to be inconsistent. There's really no guarantee, and that ultimately the fire fund is not sufficient. The general fund is not sufficient. And so we know for our partners on the suppression side, we got to figure out a way to basically relieve the pressure on the general fund and the fire fund, and just figure out a way to make sure that we can cover this pre-fire work.
The only content that I want to provide there is, I think, so the county, like a city, they have their own fire department.
Yeah.
The county contract with CAL FIRE. So they have an agreement with CAL FIRE that stipulates for X amount of money, you're going to perform these services.
Yeah.
The majority of the scope of work is on the suppression side.
Yeah.
Right. It's very little on the prevention side. Napa County decided with a capital C to change the paradigm, say we're interested in prevention. right? That was what was new. How we fund that, I think, is a question, Joe, right? And I think that's, to me, what I really want to get into it today is, I think to ask the county and city and town residents to tax themselves, they need to know what's the outcome we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
And I think it would be worthwhile to spend some time on what does that future look like? Because you have the CWPP, the Community Wildfire Prevention Plan, but what does it mean to someone in Napa?
Yeah.
In American Canyon,
absolutely,
Yountville, Saline, and Calistoga.
Yeah, for city residents, again, fire is one of these things that impacts all of us. When there's a catastrophic wildfire, what happens? People have to rebuild, prices go up, there's health impacts, insurance becomes impossible. And our approach to wildfire resilience, the way we think about it at Napa Firewise, it is integrated. We have significant portions of our work that are focused on how do we demonstrably lower insurance costs. So by working with all of these fire safety councils to get them an NFPA, National Fire Protection Association designation, it results in oftentimes a 5 to 10% reduction in premium. We have a whole other strategy, which people
Can I just pause you there? Because I think that's meaningful.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to my mom that lives in North Napa who has insurance with AAA?
So if she takes, and
I'm not trying to be self-serving.
No, this is important. No,
that's a real life example.
You want to jot some notes down and get a phone number?
No, this is important. And this is a great example of this. So we worked along with the RCD to help secure a grant so that Napa City could complete their community wildfire protection plan. And then through that process to create Firewise designated communities that are within the city limits, that are recognized by NFPA. And so to the extent that there are city residents, which there certainly are, West Park, Browns Valley, Alta Heights, there are city residents that are having challenges with insurance. That Firewise designation, which will come as a result of this planning effort that we worked with the city and the RCD on, it will help them to lower their costs. We've actually taken it a step further. We recognize that there are rural areas that surround city suburban areas. And those rural areas are areas that we've developed a framework to get designated as enhanced resilience sites. We've done this with CAL FIRE, and we've done it with about 49 different insurance companies. And that designation of the enhanced resilience site for the rural landowners around the suburban areas improves not just the insurance outcomes of the rural landowners that surround the city suburban areas, it improves the suburban landowners as well. And so many of these suburban communities, we have to be very mindful of what we saw happen in Altadena and Pasadena. Wildland fire, while it affects the wildland rural areas, when it blows into these surface streets, can be absolutely devastating. And so how we think about integrated resilience for rural areas that are right next to these suburban areas is really critical. And these strategies around Firewise designated communities, around developing these enhanced resilience sites, we've seen it. It is helping to reduce insurance premiums. It's working for HOAs, and some of these neighborhoods are in HOAs. So I think that's a key part of this strategy. We don't claim that the work that we're going to do is going to solve everybody's insurance problems, but we have to start chipping away big chunks of this community to say, hey, we can help to lower your premium, improve your capacity, maybe get you off the FAIR plan.
So I think there are a couple of challenges that I've heard people talk, because they know that I've been pretty well connected with you and Firewise for a few years now. And there are a couple of things that keep kind of bubbling up to the surface. One is we live in the cities. We don't have any damage. Very fortunately, there hasn't been any fire damage in the cities or the town, but that makes some residents feel like they're immune from the impacts that you're alluding to. They're not immune from air quality impacts or immune from loss of job, economic impacts. And also having grown up in Oakland and having so many friends that lived through the fires in the Oakland Hills that wiped out thousands of homes, it can happen in a spark. It's just been amazing that it hasn't happened yet, and the mitigation is helping. But the other thing is, when it comes to some of the other elements of the initiative about sales tax. So the city of Napa just passed a sales tax. Now you're bringing forward another sales tax measure that impacts some people more than others, but still, it's not all just visitors.
Mm-hmm.
It's some locals. So they're like, really? Now we're being asked to be taxed on this again. For people to see taxes and they think kind of, that's still my money that I'm having to give now to.
When people are concerned about affordability.
Giving it to two nonprofits,
Yeah.
to give it to two nonprofits and go through the county.
Well, to be clear, so the way there's there's a handful of things that I think city residents need to understand. One, I mean, I get it. Nobody likes taxes. Increasing taxes is challenging. For city residents, this initiative really has two elements to it. One is sort of all elements of wildfire resilience that will go to nonprofits to do this work. And this is work that we have spent the last 8 years working with city residents and county residents and rural residents and fire chiefs and agencies to develop these very detailed plans. That's what feeds into the expenditure plan on the fire side. Half the money is going to go to this wildfire resilience. The other half of the money is actually going to the open space district. And that money is really for city residents. This is polled consistently, very high within cities. City dwellers like to have access to parks and recreation. And so for the existing parks that they have access to, in some cases, they're pretty far away. So, the effort is to basically make sure that we're improving those parks, that they have good trails, and that investments are being made in the stewardship of those protected lands that are owned by the open space district and that are owned also in other areas. So, for instance, the city has vast acreage. Napa City has vast acreage of protected land that is their watersheds. Guess what? Those watersheds need all kinds of ongoing maintenance and work. It's forest health work, it's stream work. So for the city residents who rely on these protected spaces, like Lake Hennessy and Milliken, or up in, Calistoga, it's Kimball, and in St. Helena, it's Bell. Those watersheds are considered protected land, and those protected lands need ongoing work in their forests. They need ongoing work for access. So I think it's the infrastructure of protected land. It's also the recreational values of protected lands that a lot of city dwellers consistently poll, 60+% that they want access to better parks that are closer to them. And so this measure was crafted in such a way that it thought about resilience in a very integrated way. It's not just fire, it's watershed resilience. It's also the resilience within protected lands that city dwellers, consistently demonstrate in polling they feel is very, very important.
One of the other things that has been brought up to me by a couple vintners is the fact that, and we talked about, you mentioned land, like you could take care of your land and then your neighbor doesn't take care of it. And now you're at a higher risk, even though you've done everything right.
Yeah.
Some would say the land trust doesn't have the best track record for maintaining the lands they have, which is close to 100,000 acres total of various, either privately owned or owned by open space. And so the protection isn't happening the same way as the private property owner that is doing the protection that is being led in large part by the fire safe councils and Firewise. And it's like, well, are we just, raising money so that the land trust can now buy more land and not maintain it and keep it fire safe? I mean, and I don't know if there's language in there that says
well, I think
X number of dollars will go toward maintenance of land or whatever.
It's a fair point. I think it's important to understand that there's no guarantee that the land trust is going to get any of this money. This money goes to the open space district, and the open space district will use it to better manage their lands and to potentially secure new lands. They will also make it available to municipalities, cities, potentially nonprofits like the land trust. The land trust has, when you reference that number of 100,000, much of that land is actually land that's under conservation easements that's still owned by private landowners, many of whom spend quite a bit of money to manage those lands.
Sure.
And then the land trust does own lands. And I think I sense I can't speak to sort of the past, but I do know that the land trust invests hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in all kinds of stewardship projects on their lands. And I know that they are very interested in expanding and continuing to maintain those investments and do more investments on the protected lands that they have. Similarly, I know that the Open Space District, I think if you look at their strategic plan, they talk about a desire to more actively manage and steward the lands that they have, and when they buy new lands, to make sure that they build out really good strategies for how to manage those lands.
So on the mechanic side, just so we're clear, half of it would go to the Napa County Board of Supervisors, half of it would go to the Parks and Open Space District. Correct. They would be the administrators of the funds.
Yeah, so the Open Space District staff board, they would be the administrators of half the money. And they would make those funds available for projects on their land, and then also for municipalities to apply. Cities could apply for it. Yeah. Other nonprofits could apply for it.
So they would do RFPs and so forth.
Yeah,
so
and
there's a process.
There's a process.
Estimated about 11 million plus for each that.
Yeah, so everybody should clear. It's a 0.5-cent sales tax that will generate 23 million over 18 years for the voters to renew. And that money will be split. Half of it, 11.5, will go to the Open Space District. The other half doesn't go into the general fund. The county then receives those funds, and then through a series of RFPs, they are required, and you could speak to this because you were Board of Supervisors, they have to follow a very strict expenditure plan to spend those monies according to that expenditure plan. That expenditure plan on the fire side is like a mirror lift and shift of all of these community wildfire protection plans that we have developed with city residents, with county residents, with fire agencies.
So did you say, is it in perpetuity? Is there a set time?
18 years.
I really
having
like
a sunset, I think, really does.
Yeah, because I will tell you, I think I hadn't heard that before, so I think that's really good. Because if you're not doing a good job, you won't get renewed. So I really appreciate that. I think the lift, and I'm glad we're talking about it, and we're just asking you questions because this is what
these are good questions. Right? I get asked them all the time.
I think people in the county know, right? But we also learned our lesson from Measure L, right? And I think part of the opportunity is making sure folks in the cities understand the benefit. And I do think you are right, because we see it in the polling. They do love to recreate. They do love to go outdoors and have those experiences. But you got to be a little bit more concrete. The campaign, whoever's doing it, needs to be clear on does it mean? Does it mean improved trails at Austin Park? Does it mean improved experiences at Skyline? Does it include more park? Does it include the bill? All those things. I think you got to bring people along. Yeah. Because what I learned from the pandemic is people do like the outdoor experience.
They do.
Whether you're a city Napa resident or a county.
Yeah.
Right. But you got to paint the picture of what it means for them. It's not, it might mean Jefferson Park, but it might not. Right. So you have to manage those expectations. And I know you're barely started.
Yeah.
Right. So I think
you'll see our website will be evolving in the coming months as we sort of, this is Citizens Initiative. We're out there talking to folks. We're getting feedback. We know we've got a very specific set of, this is what it means for wildfire resilience for Napa City residents in their watersheds, in their communities and surrounding their communities. We do have to think about it as sort of direct and indirect. There's X amount of money. I think we've sort of come up with estimates about what it would be for Napa City direct and indirect, because Napa City is protected by a 2-mile buffer around the city. And the work that we do 2 miles outside of the city is very important for the fire safety of the city. But similarly, we're going through and we're going to articulate, what does this mean for city residents in Napa or America Canyon in terms of potential park improvements for protected lands that already exist, for watersheds. We understand completely that it's got to be quantifiable, and people should have some directional sense for okay, what's my fair share of this? You mentioned earlier that visitors will wind up paying, I think it's about 37% of the tax, which is a pretty substantial amount. And I think that mirrors what we saw in Measure L when we looked at that as well. So we're working closely right now with city fire chiefs and county fire chiefs and residents and elected officials to help them understand what is the direct and indirect impact of these funds. We also are explaining to them how this polled. I mean, this polled very, very well across the county, but in the major cities and in Napa City and American Canyon, the voters overwhelmingly in our poll, statistically meaningful, they said this is an important issue. Yeah. And I think the county, my understanding is similarly, the county did a poll maybe in the last year or something, asking about sort of prioritization of key issues. And these issues bubbled up and they were important for residents.
Unfortunately, we have a reason to be much more aware, having had two catastrophic experiences in this valley in the last 10 years. But it also, I think, has helped the average resident that maybe doesn't live in a large open space or doesn't recreate to appreciate the necessity of this kind of protection.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's important. We've talked about it, and Measure L was I think addressing it, but not to a degree that I think was necessary. Is the ongoing maintenance that is not eligible for certain funding.
Mm-hmm.
People think, well, whether the county is giving $10 million or $100 million, it can usually only go to specific, like new projects, new programs, new fire, mitigation. That stuff grows back.
Yes.
And it's as if you were never there over the years. So knowing that some grant funding, some county support, some local support isn't eligible for the maintenance. And I don't know that was fully vetted to the point that the voter understood that with Measure L, that not only was there no damage in the cities, so the city residents thought, well, that's not our problem. It's the folks that live in the hills. That's their problem.
The rich people, John.
And I wasn't going to say that, but there needs to be the ongoing maintenance funding. Like you said, you cannot count on the federal government, even when they say, here's your money. Now they say, we want it back. So there needs to be that reliable stream of funds, and it needs to be protected. And I think that was some of the feedback I've been getting is about, we want to believe that what we're hearing is fully accurate. Yeah. We don't want to find out that there was the paragraph that nobody talked about, that all of a sudden this could be converted to, some other kind of environmental initiative.
To be clear, I think the real hesitation, Joe, is I think there are some folks that have a checkered past with the land trust and some of the opinions they've taken on ag positions where they feel it might be weaponized to go buy land and take it out of ag. To be very clear, that's what I've heard, John, whether you have it or not. I have. Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of hesitation around, truly, are you going to go buy land so that way it doesn't get developed for ag, or are you going to go take ag out of production? So like that, whether that's true or not, not guessing judgment, that's something that folks believe.
Here's what I would encourage you to do. I mean, the land trust has a new CEO, Melanie Parker. I would encourage you to have Melanie on the show. She is, very knowledgeable, as is, her predecessor, Doug. I can't speak to sort of all of those mechanics of what people's perceptions are.
No, we're going to hold you accountable.
I can tell you that I work very closely with Melanie and Doug. He's now in retirement, but he's involved with the campaign. And I can tell you that these folks are committed to the overall thesis of the need to invest in resilience and steward the lands that they have, and that they're committed to this sort of overall thesis about watershed and wildfire resilience in the county. And I think that they're good partners. I think that their heart and head is in the right place. And we do understand that the availability of funding for new projects is where the priority is across multiple other counties and funding sources. It's also where there's the most competition. And one thing I would say is, county residents, city residents should have the confidence that Napa Firewise is widely regarded as like one of the most successful organizations in the state. The county and how we've organized ourselves is recognized as a county that works to be very, very efficient in how we do this wildfire and pre-fire work. We have a land trust that just had their 50-year anniversary, and we've got folks that are keenly aware on the staff and on the board about the need to actively steward land. And they're motivated to secure funds and to help the open space district secure funds for active stewardship of the lands, and to where they can find new parks that are going to be accessible for county and city residents.
Yeah, I think Firewise has built a great reputation over the many years since we had the catastrophic fires, and there is a lot of trust there and awareness.
It was earned though, John, right?
Absolutely.
It was earned through outcomes.
Absolutely.
That I think people saw.
And we've seen, like with Picket Fire in Calistoga, where there were some trails that were used for access to help keep that from getting worse than it was.
And maybe I can highlight, the Picket Fire is actually a good example of this, because I helped to organize the after action review, essentially the post-mortem with CAL FIRE and the Land Trust and Napa Firewise. And what we found is that the work that we had done to establish and enhance and maintain a number of critical roads, and the work that the Land Trust had done over near Etna Springs to provide access and to maintain and do some fuel reduction, those things proved critical to helping the firefighters contain the fire more quickly, put a box around it, and make sure that they were able to put more focus on direct attack of that fire. And it's it really was the complementary work of these organizations, Land Trust included, to do that work so that firefighters could disproportionately put most of their resources on direct attack and not have to go build adjacent and contingent and emergency lines because they were already there.
Yeah. I want to also highlight, because I was bringing up some of the concerns that some of the vintner folks that I communicate with on a regular basis had. There were also some of those same vintners praising the work that's happening, fire lines between the Sonoma-Napa border and Carneros, for example. Mm-hmm. There is proof in the execution of the work that there can be trust with, if this passes and this money is generated, that it will go toward the plans that you have.
I'm with you, John. I don't think anyone is arguing that it works, right? Because we've seen it. It's just a lot of money, right? And I think people want to trust the partners and the process, because we do have other issues. We do have lack of sports fields. We do have, health issues in our community. There's a lot of issues going on, and we're asking the public to say, hey, pay more for this. And here's why. And I think he's got to be very clear on what that means, right? And I think that's an opportunity you're going to have, because the proof's in the pudding. It works locally.
Yeah.
Right. And also,
they're asking questions that deserve answers. Yeah. And I think that we've anticipated many of these questions in the way we've crafted the initiative. So we welcome the questions and the need for clarification. We want to make sure that people understand that we designed the initiative with a really rigorous kind of oversight model, and the oversight model consists of fire chiefs and city leaders and representatives from the conservation constituencies, et cetera. So we've made sure that not just sort of rear view mirror, how is the money spent, but how do we engage collectively as a community to make sure that we sort of hold the individuals who will spend the money and award the money to account. I think
there is an oversight committee built into this.
Yes, it's part of the initiative, and we developed it specifically with that intention of making sure that people know that the money would be well spent.
So what are next steps? I know
we got to wrap, John.
Yeah,
I'm mindful of time.
Yes.
We're out gathering signatures right now. We need 5,800. We're on pace to exceed that. We're going to try to get 7,500 signatures. So we're on pace to get that by the end of May, which is plenty of time to get it on the ballot. We'll have an assigned letter, at some point. We're out there. We're getting a groundswell of endorsements. People are signing up to endorse the campaign. People are volunteering to collect signatures for the campaign. We're building out some of the campaign infrastructure with citizens and residents. For the outreach and the communication. Eventually we'll go into more of a full-blown marketing campaign mode, but right now we're working on endorsements, and there's a bit of fundraising that we need to do. But this is citizens-led. I mean, in the end, this is going to require citizens to recognize that we have to control our own destiny. We cannot be reliant on unpredictable outside funding. And we have the means here as a county to do this. And we know that the work that we do translates into positive outcomes on fire containment. We know that it'll factor into positive outcomes on more recreation spaces. We know that this will actually improve our odds on grants, because if we can show local match, our grant scores go up. If we can show that we can cover the maintenance costs, then our grant scores go up. I do a lot of this grant writing. My team does a lot of this grant writing. I know where the money is. And when I look out into the future, this is a key element to us continuing to be able to be successful.
Bringing more dollars back home, maybe.
And because it's a citizen-led initiative, it's a 50% plus one vote, not a 2/3.
Yeah, we need 50% plus one. But, our polling showed that we should be in the 60+% in the cities, American Canyon, Napa City, around the county. So we're optimistic that the voters believe in this, but in the end, we're going to bring it to them and let them make the decision in November. And hopefully they'll see the wisdom and the need for predictable funding for all this critical work that we're doing and that the Open Space District is doing. I do want to say that both the Open Space and the Land Trust, we have long histories of partnering with both those organizations. Yeah. The project that you were talking about, the County Line Ridgetop project, Open Space District was a key partner there. We're working with them to improve one of their new parks, pieces of land that they secured out there. It has a number of key fire lines that they're working with us to maintain. So I think both these organizations, I'm confident they get it. They see the value of it. In the case of the Open Space District, they do need just like us. They need durable funding to invest in these projects.
Where can people go to find out? I know that you have a website and the actual initiative language.
Yeah, saferresilientnapa.org is the website. We have the full initiative there. We're adding stuff to the website all the time. We're building out a section right now that is sort of, what does it mean for me as a Napa City resident? What does it mean for me as American Canyon or St. Helena? So we're building out some of that content. You can see all the endorsements. There's an easy way to sign up and endorse the initiative there. And I'm willing to talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime to explain to them. I do hear, when I hear a concern, oftentimes it's kind of misinformed or it's not relying on correct information. But, I'll talk to anybody and I'm happy to share information. I do encourage you to have Melanie. She's fantastic. The new CEO of the Land Trust.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, she's a great resource.
Cheers, John.
Well,
cheers.
Cheers to a safer, resilient Napa County and for all of our residents.
We can toast to that. Alfredo, I first want to acknowledge the sacrifice that you have made.
Lots of sacrifice.
You're only halfway through Lent, but to give up cigars for Lent, you know what? Here's to that.
And you're blowing right in my face, John.
Except that it's out.
Thank God.
Did you put this out for me?
Yes, I did. Or the big man upstairs did it. But yes, I did give it up, John, because sometimes you got to give up something good to see how much you appreciate it, John. And then you're going to light up in my face.
I am going to light up right in your face.
Wow. I thought we were going to talk about what we just...
Keep talking.
No, John. I think Joe did a great job. He came in, talked about what, Firewise is doing and the measure they have on the ballot, or that will be on the ballot. And I give him credit because they are trying something. They are trying to do something good, just like I am with Lent. But I am concerned, though, that they're asking people to tax themselves, and it's a lot of money, John. It's not like it's extra money. It's money that's going to impact you and me, my mom, and everyone else.
And it's a tough time for a lot of folks also to have a tax measure, but in my opinion, it's worth it because we do need sustainable funding for fire mitigation. There's the added value of open space and the land trust being able to help preserve some of the lands in Napa County. I think it's really important that Joe and everyone else that's going to be campaigning about this initiative really educate the public about what it is going to be doing and how it's going to benefit them.
Well, look, I agree with you. I think that what they're trying to achieve is worthwhile. Whether it reduces insurance premiums for people or whether it makes our community safer, which I think it's going to do both. I don't disagree with those outcomes. The challenge I have is you got to make sure people understand and place value on that, right? In a time when it's getting more expensive to live in Napa, John, in a time when I have to travel to Fairfield, California, right, and be there for 9 hours because that's where my kid has to play sports, you're asking me to tax myself for fire mitigation over sports. Or say that we have a health crisis, right, that we have a behavioral health crisis. You're asking me to tax myself for fire and open space versus that. Like, that's the trade-off. Now, I'm not telling you it's not worth it. I'm just saying you got to make sure people understand that. And I think they have a ways to go on that, of educating, of making sure that there's safeguards, that I trust Joe. But is Joe going to be there forever? No, right? Do we trust the Parks and Open Space District? Do we trust the Land Trust? And they have to address some of those issues head on, not be coy about it, not be cute about it. Just address it head on and tell the public, this is what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. What I do like, that it's not forever, that it's for 18 years, and I think that is a critical piece that the public should know.
Yeah, having a sunset, I think, is important to really justify that if it isn't working, it's okay to change and look to another vehicle that might be a better one in a few years. I'm here for you to enjoy this cigar while you can't, but you happen to be downwind, so here's to you.
Were you not a good Catholic like I am, John?
I am.
What did you give up, ballroom dancing for Lent or something like that?
I gave up kale.
You're not a good man. No, I'm not cheersing you.
Oh, wow.